For the Europeans, it started as a simple trail in the woods. Originally, it was called Bourgmont's Trail, after an early explorer. The Spanish called it El Camino Real, or the King's Road. The French called it St. Charles Road, when it connected the settlements of St. Louis and St. Charles. Meriwether Lewis took this route to meet his men during his famous expedition. St. Rose Philippine Duchesne used the route during her travel to begin a school in St. Charles. Where Fifi Road and the old St. Charles Trail met, three faith communities gathered to build a common church and a common cemetery. The three congregations have moved on, but Fifi Cemetery remains.
My name is Ruth Abraham. My maiden name was Mensendick. That's a German name for sure. I was born over on Fifi Road. They tore the house that I was born in down just a couple years ago. I grew up in, and I've lived all my life really in the area of about 5 miles of this area. The cemetery has been under the control of 3 denominations since back in 1870 when the churches decided to relocate. You know, there was the Fifi Baptist Church, and the Fifi Presbyterian Church, and the Bridgeton Methodist Church all met for many years, beginning somewhere in the 1830s. They met together in the same building, had a good relationship, got along fine together, and took turns in having services. For many years, this went along. But then the Methodists in Bridgeton, they dissolved their church. It was no more, and so that left just the trustees from the Presbyterians and the Baptists. The growth of the area has had an effect upon the cemetery, of course, because it has rather bounded in as far as its expansion is concerned. It's land bound. But the cemetery itself has increased in size since the beginning, when just 3 acres of land were given by James Richardson to the newly formed church back in 1807. He gave 3 acres of land to be used as a cemetery and a church site. And so that was the beginning. Since then they have added, I know at one time, 5 acres and probably some more I don't know about. In the years following the American Revolution, many people moved to Louisiana Territory. Settlers came, they were able to receive as many as 800 acres of land for a charge of about $40 cost. And so it was quite a bargain for them to come. One requirement, however, was that they would be Catholic. To qualify, they were asked several general religious questions, and even non-Catholics could answer them satisfactorily, so they'd be pronounced good Catholics. So this was not a problem for many of the non-Catholic families who settled here. This included the Musics and all those Methodists and Presbyterians and Baptists who came from the East. And they asked their governor, Governor Trudeau. Now, Governor Trudeau was a Frenchman, but he was representing the Spanish people because the Spanish used many of the French officials when they came here. And they asked Governor Trudeau for permission, and he hesitated, but Then he says, okay, you can do it if you want to. You can meet together in each other's homes. Just don't put a bell or a steeple on your house like it's a church. And don't christen your babies. Let the priest do that, and it would be all right, since you're all good Catholics. And so really, it wasn't any problem to the non-Catholics who came. The name Fifi is something that causes people to ask questions. Being a part of Fifi Baptist Church, we have buses and everything that has Fifi on it. We go to meetings outside of the area, and they'll laugh and say, what kind of name is that you got there? And they think it's either a dog or there used to be a movie star named Fifi Darcy. But actually, there are several stories that tend to tell the origin of the name, and I've always accepted the one about Fifi Beaugenot. He was a little Frenchman who lived in St. Louis for many years, raised his family, and when he finally got to his older years, and many of his family were gone or dead or married, and he decided to move out to the country, and he came out to this area. And he settled along a creek that flowed through much of the land out right in here where we are today. And he got to be very well known. They called it Fifi's Creek. His name was Fifi because he was a junior. His father's name was Nicholas Beaugenot, and his name was. So in order to differentiate between the two of them, they called him Fi. If you know French, you know that F-I-L-S means son. And they doubled it, son, they called him Fifi. And it graduated into being spelled F-E-E. And the creek that was by where he lived, they called that Fifi's Creek. And the road that led along there became Fifi Road. And that's where it all comes from. Mm-hmm. Where he's buried, I don't know. As you walk through the cemetery and look at the old stones, many of them are unreadable now, but many of them you can still make out the names. You will see many names that are familiar to you. Familiar roads, familiar places, and you will find that many of the people who are the namesakes of these roads and places are buried there. For instance, there's the 80s, the Avery name, the Brown, Dorset, Garrett, Gentry, Gist, Hanley, Long, Patton, Remington, Walton. All these names were people who settled here in this area.
Several of the Patton family rest in Fifi Cemetery. Two brothers, Elliot and John Patton, co-owners of a store with a small post office, named that small post office Pattonville. Later, C.C. Brannicky purchased the store, and Brannicky's True Value still serves the Pattonville area. The name Pattonville has been used for Pattonville School District and Pattonville Fire Protection District, but curiously has never been used for a municipality.
The first pastor of Fifi Baptist Church, his name was Reverend Thomas R. Music. He was part of the great music clan that came here to settle back in the late 1700s. He lived over in Illinois because preachers were not allowed to live here because we were under Spanish control, which was totally Catholic. And so when this area became part of the United States, then he was free to come over and live here, and they called him to be the pastor of the church as it was organized in 1807. To me, I think that's the most important person who lives there. He was the pastor for over 30 years. Well, the Music family was quite an illustrious group of people. They came here from Virginia in the late 1700s, brought everything they had, moved here to settle. They said there were at least 100 people in the clan that moved here, and they brought all their relations with them. They settled here, got land grants, and became leaders in the community. The historic black church in the area called the Music Baptist Church. This church was organized and set up by one of the music brothers. I think it was, I'm not sure of his first name. All the kids in that family had names of 3 letters. It was URI, I think. Anyway, he saw that his slaves wanted to have a church of their own, and he made this possible. And that was the beginning of the Music Baptist Church. It's continued ever since that time. The Civil War in this area affected all of the people of Missouri. The struggle affected everyone. People of our area belonged to both the Confederate and the Union beliefs and followings. As you walk through the cemetery, you will see a stone that tells a very sad story about the war. James Utz was a young man of Bridgeton. He had Southern ideas. He believed in the Confederate beliefs, and he joined the Confederate Army. He became a major. He was the special agent of the Confederate States. And one time he was sent back to St. Louis. Now, we don't know if this was true, what they said about him, or if he just came to visit his family. But he was recognized, and the Union soldiers took him as a prisoner. He was charged as a spy, and he was charged with recruiting men behind Union lines and carrying information on himself that was enemy information. And he was arrested and put in jail. Now his uncle, who was a judge, Judge Hyatt, felt like his nephew was not guilty at all, and he hurried to Washington to plea for him. As it turned out, President Lincoln gave him a pardon, but they put him to death the day after Christmas. And not too many days later, his uncle got back with the pardon, too late to save his nephew. And that stone is in the old cemetery.
Mabel Brewster Remington first taught in what was the Maryland Heights School District in 1894. In 1950, she donated the land along Fife Road where Remington Traditional Elementary School now stands. Her only caveat was that the school always carried the name of Remington.
The caretaker lives in the old meeting house. It has been restored to be a home. He has his rent for the privilege of living there, and his duties are to take care of the grass cutting and the care of the cemetery itself, the opening and closing of graves, and general keeping of the records in the office there. One aspect of all the changes that have taken place that I have witnessed has distressed me, and it's in the process of growing and changing, we have destroyed and removed and done away with most of the old landmarks of our area. Payne Gentry is one that has been preserved. We're thankful for that. But there's so many others that are gone. Not too many years ago, because I can still remember all these houses that were still around. Beautiful old homes. They're there one day, and the next day you drive by and they're gone. There was, just to name these, you remember the Oaks down on St. Charles Rock Road? Just a few years ago that went. The Brandes house, then up on Fife Road, there was the Baldwins and the Longs, and the Vaughns and the Dolans and the Blakes and the DeHaters and the Hendersons and the Babers. Into Bridgeton, the Runpoles and the Kesslers and the Hydorns, the old Methodist church, the old St. Mary's church, the hall and the school, the Galeys and the Carters and the DeClues and the Gists and the Webbers. All of those people had beautiful big homes, and they're all gone. None were saved. The Lucas house, which is still standing, doesn't have a very good future. It looks like it will go too. So really the Payne Gentry house is the only one that's been saved.